Okay, so what we'll do from today is we will do a mini project which we can complete in 2 weeks. The project's statement is simple, and what we'll do is we'll try to break things into smaller parts. We'll try to design how it is built, and then we'll try to write the code in coming sessions. So before that, I'm just going to revise the things that we have studied so far, so that we have continuity. So in the from the first class, you know that we studied about computers and how the things work. So there key points to remember is how the Python works. So it has a virtual machine, or it's called also as an interpreter. So it works on top of operating system. So once you install the Python virtual machine, and on top of that you can run the programs, and it helps us to forget about the hardware and the operating system that you are using. So that is about the how the Python works. So that is a key point in that session. So in second session we looked at various data types, and we also looked at examples, strings, list, tuple, set, dictionaries, and stuff like that. And we looked at loops. We have seen an example of counting coins. Just remember that if you think step by step, you won't forget the initialization and the ending of the for loop, and then it will be easy. And then we also looked at functions. That is it's a shortcut, or it's a we bundle a lot of statements into a smaller bunch, and then we make it a function so that it is reusable. So that is about the function. And then we also looked at the scope of variables, how the Python searches the variables inside its execution scope. And then pass by reference, pass by values, and we also looked at objects. So objects are the key point to remember in the objects is it has attributes and operations. And we also saw some of the functions using which we can explore more about objects, such as dir. Dir gives us all the things that are inside the objects, and the type gives us what is the type of that particular object. And we also looked at id. Id gives us the ID of that object inside the RAM. So what Python does is it creates its own process. It is its own environment. Inside that, it manages the memory. So that memory in turn is mapped to RAM. Okay. And then we looked at how to take user inputs in a simple way. A key point to remember here is whatever you enter, it comes as a string, and it is our job as a programmer to convert it into whatever the type that we want, and then use it further. And we looked at files. Files, you remember pizza. That is the hard disk, and then we try to extract some data out of the hard disk. And there are several different ways. So that is why we discussed about the various formats, the challenges that files face. And then once we open that, so it's a simple byte stream. Those are just magnetic signals, and then we try to read those magnetic signals, and the operating system converts them into byte stream, and internally in the program we can read that byte stream. And if we convert that byte stream into ASCII, that becomes a text file. And if it's an Excel sheet or a movie file, so we have to convert. We have to know the logic, how the bytes are formed, and then we have to write the program. So but we don't have to write that because there are already libraries. So that's about key point about files. And we looked at data interchange formats, XML, JSON, and YAML. There are several. So these two are like widely used. Once you get used to this, you know that how to represent an object, or hierarchy of objects in a text file. So that is the key point in XML and JSON. So we looked at how is the visual representation, and then how is the JSON representation. This is JSON, and this is XML. So we can convert JSON to XML and XML to JSON, back and forth. So that is about the how do we represent the data in text format. and then we looked at exceptions. So exceptions are nothing but which can go wrong. For example, you're trying to open a file which is not existing. So what is the key point to remember here? Key point to remember is once there is an exception, the statements that are below the exception, it doesn't get executed. That means the program crashes. So that is why we looked at how the stack works, and how the function gets called, and how the exception trace looks like. So that is called as traceback. The reason it is called as traceback is because we are trying to trace the functions in the files where it is called from the execution point, and where it is ended. So that is why it is called as traceback. That is the key point to remember. And in order to avoid that, you will try to write try block and then except block. So other two are optional. You can use it if you want, but the basic structure is try and accept. So that is about it. And we looked at briefly about regular expressions. So regular expressions are nothing but we are trying to find out text patterns. We can find the pattern, we can replace the pattern, we can search it, and we can find all the occurrences, things like that. So basically what we are trying to do is we have a pattern in our mind. So that pattern we are trying to search inside the file. So that depends on the context that you are searching. So we looked at IP address, and how do we represent numbers in terms of regular expression, that is /d. D plus is multiple occurrences of the digits. So there are several other expressions, such as /s stands for spaces, white spaces, and things like that. So you can try to read more about regular expressions. It's a big concept by in itself. So don't try to write your own regular expressions, because you can go wrong. For simple one you can do it, but for complex one you try to search it and try to understand it. Then you can do the further processing. So that was about regular expressions. And modules and packages, we saw that what are modules. Modules are just but files, Python files. So it is there, since there everything is a object in Python. It is called as module, and it's an object of type module. So if you try to do once you import, say you import dashboard, and then you try to do type of that dashboard, it will give it as module. So that is why they are called as modules. And then inside modules it can have functions, and then all these things can be put together in a folder, and that folder we can call as packages. So how does Python recognize packages? It has init file. So it could be empty, or it can have some instructions. So _init _.py will tell you that okay, this is a Python package. Okay, so that is about packages and modules briefly. And then you can import. There are several ways to import the modules. So these are the common ways. So I haven't used anything other than this so far. So import just module from import from module.import that function or class, whatever it is. And then if you have two same functions in different files, for example dashboard and Excel contains function named as report. So what happens is when you try to import both of them and call report, Python doesn't know which one to pick. So what you try to do is you give an alias. Alias is it's just a name. So just like a is equal to x, b is equal to x. That means a and b both are pointing to x, but names are different. So that is what this as does. From import that function as something. So that is your own variable. And then how to install packages. You can try to install packages. Just type pip install and try to download some package. We will see that in our projects, how to download. And in sometimes pip doesn't work. If you have version 3, it will be like pip 3. So try that as well. So that is about pip. And then we learned about debugging. So key points to remember in debugging is the reason that we cannot use print is because print is designed to uh, point to, in the sense its output is directed to the monitor. So if there is no monitor, and so and we cannot see that. For example, our embedded systems doesn't have any monitors, and the programs that you're running in the background in your PC or in the mobile, so they do not have access to the or they have not written program to dump it on the monitor. So what we typically do is we write it into a file. So we saw the problems, what are the problems by writing into your own file. So if you just create a file, so there could be multi-processing, multi-threading, and we cannot get the order right, and file can be like open for reading and another cannot open for writing. So there are several problems. So all these problems are were repeating so far in from decades, and in the software industry, and people have written logging module for that. So you just import that logging module, and then you start using it. So that is about logging. And then we also looked at debugger. So Python debugger is also called as PDB. It is coming from GDB, so GNU debugger, and then when Python was generated, it was renamed. It was just named as PDB. And then PDB, what is the key point to take? It's like you are asking the control from the interpreter and stopping the execution, and then you take over the execution. You can also look at variables that are under execution. We also saw the instruction pointer that is pointing to the instruction in your file, that arrow mark, which we saw when we list out the list in PDB, list the expressions. Okay, so just imagine the statue game that we were telling. So you can imagine that, and that is how the PDB works. Okay, so that's the key point. And in object-oriented class, we looked at creating our own data types. So far we were using list, dictionaries, and all these data types. So we can create our own data types. So how did we create? We created class, and then inside that we wrote member functions. And the key point to remember in the member functions is the first argument in the function is the object itself, and then you need to create an object. So creating an object is like specifying what kind of object you want, and class is just a blueprint of it. So that is about classes. And then you can initialize it using init. So it is popularly known as a constructor, but as a programmer, if you look deeply, it is not a constructor, it is an initialization state. Construction happens in new, and new calls initialization. So that is why it is known as constructor. So that is one of the key points: init, and then self. So self is not a keyword, it is just a, by convention, people have used it. It is just like this pointer in C++. So in C++, if you have studied C++, it's just like this points always to the current object. Okay, so that is about it. And we also looked at inheritance. Inheritance helps us to inherit all the code and logic that is already written. So it helps us to avoid rewriting the entire code. So if you have written 2000 lines of code in certain say automation framework or something like that, so you can use the same code without even thinking about what is the internal implementation. You just read the document and just simply inherit that particular class, and you don't have to rewrite 2000 lines again. So on top of that, you can additionally add some more functionality, and that is the one of the good uses of inheritance. And you can explore more on object-oriented programming. So because now you know how to create your own classes and what are the advantages. So that is about it. And yesterday we saw about unit tests. So unit tests, the reason that we need to write unit tests is to test our own code. So it's like you are writing code to test your code. So we saw that test code actually grows much bigger than your actual code. So you might be thinking, oh, I have to write so many things. So it helps in a long-term software maintenance. That is because once you write, you have say 10 features already existing. Now there are 5 features coming in, and then you try to write those 5 features which are actually modifying the existing code. So then we have to make sure that the 10 features that are already working, maybe that those things are like basic and they are already bringing additional value to the customers. So we have to make sure that the last 10 features are not broken at development level. So after once we finish unit testing, then the testing team will take it up and then do integration testing. So for example, if there is something, a module that you are working on is in the backend, and GUI has some problem, so you cannot debug because you do not have enough skills, and there's a separate team, but you have to test your own backend code, and the GUI plus the backend will be tested by the integration testing team. So in fact, they also write code to integrate such. So such code can be like something like using a robo framework, Selenium, and all these kind of tools. They can automate that, and then they can put it into their automated system. So pipeline system, something like Jenkins, and there are several other pipelines. Okay. So unit testing is what we should be worried at coding level. So then it goes all the way to the acceptance testing, and also we looked at the severity of the problems that we can face. So if we think ahead of the time, and then if we fix it before, the cost is much lesser than when it goes out to the customers. So that is how we are containing the bugs. So that is the first step, and then yeah, that is about it. So far we have covered almost all the concepts in the basic concepts of the in Python. So that is about it. So now I guess you are able to read the code at least, and you are able to think line by line, and at least write simple programs. So which is a good progression. Okay. So from today, what we'll do is we'll spend about 30 minutes in project requirement analysis. So we'll have just prepared a small project statement. So the project requirement is like this. So what we are trying to do is imagine that you remember that there was a JSON API. Once you type that URL into your Chrome browser or whatever it is, so it just gives JSON response instead of HTML. So that JSON is ready to be consumed by the programs. So what we are going to do is we are going to write program to consume that JSON, and we are going to do additional functionality. So let us consider that there is a company which provides that, which provides the input of the COVID data, which is collected from all over the place. And then we think that we are running a web service, and then web service focuses on collecting COVID-19 data in India, and then sends out state-wise results to user who is interested to know about his or her states. For example, there is just imagine that there is a portal, and just like you register into all the whatever the website that you're subscribing to certain blogs and things like that. So you just give your email ID, and maybe you click on what are the states that you are interested in, and then the backend gets that data, and then make sure that user will get email every day containing the following information. So if you are a user, and then you provide your email ID, and say you have clicked on Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, and another user has clicked on Karnataka and Kerala. So what both of them will get is he will get an email containing data on his interested states. So he's not worried about Arunachal Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh or Kashmir, because he's not interested in that. So he wants to just look at what are the states that is he is interested in. So only that data will be extracted and sent on mail. So that is one of the things that will be sent on mail. And then the subject line, anyways, we can this is not a this doesn't involve any logic. You can simply put the subject line. So this is the subject line. So something like COVID-19 daily report, and you can put the state names, or you can put the state names. And the next requirement is we need to prepare an Excel sheet out of this input JSON. So Excel sheet would look like, so we will draw diagrams in a moment. So it will have list of states, and then in one column and another column it will contain what are the total number of COVID-19 cases in the each of the state. So that will go as an attachment, but in the text format he will get only the states that is interested. And then next thing that the email will contain is also the news that are present in top websites. So we are not going to so if you want to read about COVID-19 news, what you do is in Google you search for COVID-19, and then you click on the news tab in Google, and then you'll get all the news from all over the places, like Deccan Herald, Times of India, the Hindu, and all the newspapers, and you get only COVID-19 news. So what we are going to do is, in the backend we are going to write code to extract the news from websites. So it is also called as web scraping. So we'll extract the news, and then we will put that as a form in the email. So these are the basic requirements. So what we are trying to achieve is I'll just get into drawing mode so that we have visualization. Okay, so what we'll do is the end goal of our mini project is like this. So you have a mail. In the mail, what to have in the mail is from address to address, and then you have the subject line here, so or the content, actual content, something like dear something, and then regards, this is the text. And here what we're going to do is email text containing data in his interest states. So if he has registered to Karnataka and Kerala, what he will get is Karnataka cases, say 344, and Kerala some 283, something like this. And this is the text that he will get. And then this is one part. The next part is here below that he will also get the top news of COVID. So what is happening in the COVID area. So we are going to extract the news from top newspapers, and then we are going to add that into the mail here. And then the third part is the attachment that goes in here. So this is an attachment. So this attachment will contain Excel sheet. So this will contain something like, this is a table, and here state name, and then total number of cases, say active cases, deceased cases, and all this information. So this is what we're going to do. So there are like maybe 30 states, so all of them will be in the Excel sheet. So that goes as an attachment. And second thing is the states that he is subscribed to or interested in, and then the news part. So so we are this is our end goal. So to do that, since we are used to the subscription, It might sound simple, but when you start writing code, so we are going to face a lot of challenges. So what I've done is, while preparing the requirements, I made sure that the most common things that we do in most of the projects is addressed. So that is like sending, making reports, that is in Excel sheet. So maybe that in your project, or uh, in your team, maybe you're trying to assess some data, and or you're trying to do test cases. You're collecting the test cases and look at what are the failing test cases, so what are the past test cases, and then you are making a report manually for now. And then you are copy pasting those reports into Excel sheet, and then attaching that into a mail. So you can automate all these things. So this is one of the common things that people do. And then in my previous batch, one of the students, he was working for pharmacy company. So what he was trying to do, or his team was trying to do, is they were collecting data for a particular product. So they had several products, like sanitizers and things like that. For an example, so there was a sanitizer that was produced by his company, and to release that product into the market, what they were doing is they were trying to collect the data from various other websites, such as Flipkart, Amazon, and there are several websites. So they were collecting the prices of the existing prices of that sanitizer, and then compare it, and so that the price is competitive. So they were collecting the data manually and copy pasting it into Excel sheet, and then they were trying to send the reports to their managers or the marketing team. So what this guy did was, once this project was done, he tried to do the web scraping and automatically get the data from Flipkart and Amazon, and he wrote code to get those prices, and then also do the analysis part. And then he automatically generated the Excel sheet, and just put it to the mail. So that was one of the, like, you're saving, once you do this, it's like you're saving a lot of time for your in your team, and team can focus on other things, so better things, so like research and all these things. So this is a manual repetitive job. So he has tried to solve that after this bootcamp. So that was one example. So that is one of the common examples. So reporting is one of the common things that we do in most of the projects. Second thing is, we are trying to get data from outside world, and then we are also trying to play around with JSON. So this JSON is used in a lot of projects. For example, I was giving an example that if you have, say, Wi-Fi devices and routers that your company is managing, say Cisco, and you have multiple routers, and you need to collect the configuration of all the routers, and then you need to analyze the what is the problem. So what you do is, you kind of write scripts to pull those configuration from those devices, and then maybe those devices send you an XML or JSON in that format, and then you take that, and then you process the data, and you know that, okay, now there is a router. Inside that router there is an interface, and what interfaces are configured, what IP addresses, all this can be expressed in terms of XML or JSON. Now you have an idea about, textual idea about how is the router configured, and then you can easily manage that, or you can send back the configuration, or you can use it for your own reports. For example, JSON cannot be read by your managers, XML, all these things. It's difficult to be read by the normal people who are managing things. So you can collect all of this, and then kind of make a report and send an email. So this can be automated. So I have taken things that are commonly used. So JSON reporting, sending mails. So that is how I have made this project statement. So if you have any ideas, or if you have any problems that you're facing in your project you want to automate, we can discuss offline. So I'll be more than happy to break down things and help you out. Okay, so that is about the statement of the project and how it can be useful in your project or in your day-to-day life. Okay, so that is about the project requirements. So we will just analyze the requirements. So what we'll do is I'll just I have only one slide today because we are not going to do any coding today. So we are just going to do a brainstorming for some time. Okay, so once we look at the requirements, now we know what are the requirements. We're going to do the first step. So first step is, once you get the requirement, you need to do a brainstorming is nothing but since the project statement is already known for us, it's easy to understand. But in the real world, that is like in the real software, the requirements are quite big, and that is why people send you meeting requests, and then you sit together and talk, debate, fight it out. No, this can be done, this cannot be done. No, we do not have enough people. All these things happens during this phase. So one is the people management. Another thing is the technical part. So we will focus on the technical part, how the requirements can be broken down into various pieces, and how can we connect it. So we have seen the requirement. So requirement is quite simple. The first thing that is in the requirement is collecting the data from the external world. So input data. So let me just write it as input data. So this is coming from external world. And second thing that comes to our mind when we look at the requirement is sending email. Send email. Okay. The third thing that you can think is making reports out of input data. So what is the report that we are making? Well, first thing is the subscription report. That means only if whether he is interested in a few states. So we need to extract the data. So that is one part. So report, we have two kinds of report. One is text report, so which will contain a simple table or a text like this, Karnataka or Kerala for example, and some cases 45 or 66, something like this. So this is one kind of report that we are going to extract from the input data. And then the next thing is the Excel sheet. So this Excel sheet will contain all the states. So it's like you have a subset to the mail, but first thing that you're interested is in your states. But if further, if you want to look at all the states, you can also click on the attachment and look at what is happening in the entire country. So that is about this Excel sheet. So it has all the states and all the numbers. Maybe we have multiple columns for active cases and discharged or solved cases, and then deceased means death cases. So deceased cases. So all these things will be put in the report. So this is like the entire country report, and this is for the subscription report. The only subscription is present. And the fourth thing important, and this is this part is the one of the challenging parts. So this part is getting news part. So how do we get the news from various websites, and then how do we add it into the email? So sending us, so what we can see is, so we are getting input data, and then we are making a report, and then we are making we are trying to extract news from external world. This is also external world. external what, and then we are going to extract the news out of it. So in the news, what we are going to do is we are going to extract the headlines. In fact, we can extract the entire news itself, but in mail it doesn't look good to have the full text of the news because it grows big. What we'll do is we will keep headline, and then in a table format, or maybe we'll hyperlink this into its link. Say you see a news in the Hindu, and then that headline is present here, and then maybe hyperlink is given to that text. So once you click that, it will take to the news. So it's like it's like tailored subscription for COVID. So in fact, if time permits, we can also do a web input. So these are the four things that we are going to do. So what we are going to hard code for our simplicity is the subscription data. So first one is subscription data. So what is the subscription data? Subscribe. What is this subscription data? Subscription data is nothing but the email address and the states that are going to click, or we are going to select in the website. So that website part we are not going to do it. If time permits, we'll do it, but the challenges in that is it may involve frameworks, and it takes a lot of time to take input. So this part, only the subscription part, we're going to hard code, where maybe we are going to hard code in a text file or in an Excel sheet, that is left to us. So let us say we are putting finally we are putting things in a dictionary. So it's like you have email ID, and then you have a list of states. So the key of the dictionary is email, and then the list, the values is the list of states, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, whatever that a particular person is interested. So this is about requirements. So is there any questions at requirement level? Any questions? Please ask me. Any other inputs are also welcome, because we can simply write code on top of it.
Yeah, Diga, Sushant
Uh-huh.
this side. Suppose if we are taking the data of COVID situation, and do we are mentioning the like from which date to which date it's the number are getting high, and all the other calculative steps.
Actually, we can do that. So that is I put it as an additional requirement. So what we can do is we are collecting. We do not have date-wise data in the JSON. But what we can do is we can collect every day. That means if we collect for 7 days, our JSON data will have different numbers, right? Say for example, in Karnataka we have 45 today. So tomorrow it can be 36, and day after tomorrow it can be 55. So all this data can be, we can put in a database. So then we can have the analytics on top of it. So that is one of the additional requirements. So so depending on the speed that you can write the code. So these are two additional requirements. One requirement is actual web service. That means you can make a simple web page and get the data. Next is graphical representation of COVID cases. Graphical representation is nothing but the same thing, whatever you told, from this date to this date, what is the increase. Maybe we can do something like a graph like this, and maybe for week, if we have a weekly graph or last 7 days report, something like day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we can have plotting something like, okay, today it was um, say this is about 10, 20, 30, some numbers, and then we can plot this. Okay, today it was 10, next day it was uh, 30, and next day it was like this, and we can do something like this. So this will involve a database. That is because I'll make it larger. This will involve database that we can in fact we can take that into account. That will be good. So we can do that as well. What we'll do is we will collect the data every day, because the JSON itself doesn't have the date and time. So what we can do is we can collect the data. Now we are doing it dynamically. That means this so for all these five different parts does not involve any database, because we are not storing it. But if we have to make a graph out of this, we need at least 7 days of data. So we'll store that in database. Yes, we can do that. So that I'll take this as an input and we'll do that. So we can
Thank you.
do this as well. Yeah. That is what you expected.
Yes, yes, Ritika.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Actually, I am also try to automate one of the like in our Ericsson system. There's a monthly time basis or weekly time basis,
Okay.
and suppose one of the employee or two of, and another employee are not fill their time sheet, then we got mail from the management. So
Okay.
what I think that we can automate the system weekly wise, so that everybody were aware and nobody miss any time sheet.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes. You can do that. So you can collect data in the database, and you can just extract data between the last month or these things. Yes, we can do
Yes.
that. Yeah. If that's helpful, we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that is okay. So that is about requirement. So is the requirement clear for everybody, or is there any questions in your mind?
So, sir, are we creating a web page?
For now, no, we are not going to create a web page because web page creation has a separate. It's a separate framework. If time permits, we are going to create a web page, but we are going to simulate the input. So whatever we are
Okay.
collecting from the web page, we are going to simulate that. That means we are going to hard code these values.
Okay, okay, okay.
So the thing is, in 2 weeks we cannot do all of the things. In fact, we can do over the period of 3 weeks, because it depends on how we write code and how the discussion happens. So, but once you finish this, you will know how to connect things. In the sense, you don't have to think that web part is a different thing and it is difficult to learn, because we are going to learn how to break the things into smaller parts and then how to integrate that. So that is our goal. So you can make a web page. So after doing this,
Okay, sir.
any more questions? Okay, I think the requirement is clear. So let me just erase this. Clear canvas. So what we'll do is in next 10 minutes, what we're going to do is now we have understood the requirements. So this is like first level of brainstorming. So we have just listed down all the things that was there in the document. So next thing that we usually do is we try to break that into visualization form. So what we do is just like we were doing in the previous classes, we are going to draw boxes and circles. So why this is required is it is easy to humans are automatically plugged in to recognize images and the visualization, say video or the picture. So that is why we always try to write the diagrams and out of the text. So text format is just to understand, because text you have to read line by line, but the diagrams you see in one shot, you understand everything. So that is why we prefer while discussing we prefer to write the diagrams and then connect the things. So in fact, we can write say for example, if you want to teach cooking to someone, so in fact you can write diagrams and teach, so they will never forget. So that is why in software industry or in brainstorming in marketing industry, so all these industries we extensively use diagrams. So you might be seeing architectural diagrams, design diagrams, test plan diagrams. Wherever you go, all these are diagrams. So how these diagrams are done? So these diagrams are done out of the requirements. So we are going to just try to brainstorm using the diagrams. So we had like 5 parts, if you remember. So one part was the input data. So I'm going to just draw a box here, input data. And then there was another module or component. So that was something to do with mail. So that was another part. So we're going to write code for input and then the mail. And then there is another part that is to do with reports. So that part. So I'm just going to draw the box. And then what else? Excel sheet. So reports have again XLS and your user specific report. And then one of the important parts is news. So another diagram. So another box called as news. So now we have broken down that requirement into pieces. So these are just boxes. So now the next step, the first step is to understand requirements. So requirements understanding is done. Second part is to break things into smaller parts like this. The third step is to connect this. So the overall idea is to make sure that the entire things work. So why are we breaking into modules? In fact, you can open a file and start writing code line by line without even writing the functions. So everything works. But the challenge is when you start inserting the feature. For example, tomorrow maybe we are going to insert a new feature called as say graphs. Okay, so maybe all the data, instead of this XLS, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the graph instead of this. So if I want to change the code, so if you write everything in single file, what will happen? So you're going to remove this code and you don't know some variables and some references, you might delete it, and then maybe you replace that with your graph code. And then when you try to run the program, maybe this breaks the email part, maybe it breaks the input, but no, maybe it breaks the other user specific reports. So you never know, so it will be unmanageable. So that is the challenge. While that is why we try to draw simple boxes, and then we try to contain all the functionalities into one box. So that is in terms of visualization. In terms of code, you will put that in a folder, or and then you are going to write separate files into inside that folder. That means you're trying to package one responsibility into one thing. So what you're trying to do is, like, you give one responsibility to that module, and then similar responsibilities you can pull it together and put it into one folder, just like here we did. So these are two files, two modules, if you have to write code, and then we are going to put that in a reports package. So now these are similar responsibilities. So both of them are doing the similar thing, but representation is slightly different. So that is why we need to break things into components. So now the challenge is to connect this. So how does the program flow work? So input, first the input. So how input is extracted from some web input. So this is external. So once this is received, or this is extracted, we do not try to jump to news. Okay, so what happens if you try to jump to news? There is no connection between these two, because this news is also extracted from outside world. So you're not going to connect parts external, okay, parts which are not related. So what we are going to do is, maybe we are going to connect input to, let us try to connect input to mail. So I get the input and I try to send the mail. So what are we trying to do? So we get the input and we try to send the mail. So that is also not correct, because there is a um, lot of code that you have to write to get the expected result. So what is expected? So we have a mail which contains user report and the overall report. So if you start sending mail, maybe you write code to do extract the user data and then do XLS as well here. Now, but if you try to connect mail and input, what is happening is you connect the input and then you send mail with this to information, and then again you try to connect input with this news. So what is happening is you'll be sending two mails instead of one. So this is how we need to think. So instead of sending one mail, now I'm sending two mails. The reason is because my design is not proper. That means input, once you receive input, I need to I need to send mail only after we do something else. So the overall idea is to have these reports in a single mail. So this is a wrong design. So what we'll do is we will reject that design as well. So I'll just draw mark like this. So this is not right. So this is also not right to send connect input to news, because it is unrelated. And then since we are discussing about things we already know, this looks very obvious. But when we try to analyze requirements in the industry, because we cannot imagine or we do not have the proper visualization, so then it is possible to connect one module to another module which are unrelated, and then the cost is much bigger once we start writing code. So before writing code, we must be very clear about how the things are connected. So so that is why we're trying to take examples which we have already seen in our day-to-day life, and we're trying to connect it. So these two are definitely not the right connections. So then what should be done? So after this input is received, so maybe I take that input and then send it to reports module. So this guy will maybe he will take that into reports, and then he will make an Excel sheet out of it, and then also this part, user report and the overall report, and then he will keep that. So then how do we send the mail? So if you connect the reports directly to mail, so we have the same problem. That means if you send mail soon after the reports is done, it's as good as sending the input to mail. So now again you are sending two mails. One is for reports and one is for a separate independent entity which is news. So how do you want to connect these parts in a nice way? So first input, go to reports, process that. So this part, the news part, needs to be handled independently, and then we need to connect news and reports, and then there is a aggregation place which happens in a intermediary module or intermediary function. So in that we need to aggregate these two. That means you are trying to aggregate the reports and the news and then send the mail. Okay, but how do you send the mail? So what is the input that you are going to send the mail? So we had another module which was a subscription data. So take the subscription data, and where to send mail, it is not clear now because we have not processed the subscription data. So it is possible that while discussing the requirements and breaking things into boxes, we tend to forget to draw an important box. So if we had if you had forgotten this, and if you had started to write code, what would have happened is, while writing the code for mail, so you don't know to where to send and how do I extract the data. So that part needs to be kept in mind, because it looks obvious that okay, we are sending mails to people, but we do not know where the data is present. So you need to make sure that all the boxes are somehow connected back to the requirements. So this is called as requirement and requirement analysis and the requirement mapping. So now you see that okay, now the input is connected to one of the requirements that we discussed. Yes, so email text containing data in interest states, whether it is satisfied. Yes, this is there. So subject line, so that is anyways will be sent in mail. So I'm going to just write let me take a thicker one. Okay, so mail I have done, so that is taken care in mail. So third requirement was attaching an Excel sheet, so country wise. So yes, I have created an attachment. So we are trying to make sure that none of the requirements are sidelined or forgotten. All right, and then we're going to look at the news. So news from top, this one. Yes, I have got the module. This is done, and then the graphic, the additional requirements we can work out further. See here in these 4 points there is no subscription data. So then you read the project statement, because we are focusing only on these four things. We think that okay, these are the only 4 boxes, but but actually the requirement is, imagine that you're running a web service. Web service focuses on collecting data for COVID-19 in India, and sends the state-wise results to user who is interested to know about his or her states. So this is the key point that we need to think about. So who is interested to know about his or her states? So this point we need to remember. So this is not obvious here. So it is highly possible that we forget about this box, and we mess up the design going further. So what we are essentially discussing is what things can go wrong when you are trying to brainstorm. So one is the connections, right connections. This can go wrong. These connections can go wrong, and that faulty design can lead into multiple mails. So that we discussed. And one of the things that we discussed was requirement which is very obvious. We forget about that, because we think that okay, anyways we are getting the input, but where are we getting the input, and how are we going to map this to the reports? For example, say Amar, there is a person called as Amar. Amar is subscribed to Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. Okay, so once you have this data, so how are you going to map to this particular inside the JSON? That means JSON has everything. So how are we going to extract this Amar and Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka and send it only to Amar? So it is possible that you can you may be sending this report to someone else as well. So how are you going to map this? So if we do not have this particular subscription or subscribers module, we are going to forget the whole thing. So our mapping becomes very difficult when we start writing the code. So this is so you may be now we have discussed from the beginning. So now this diagrams make sense to us. So if you show this diagram to say your kids or your parents or someone else, your colleagues, so this looks like what is this? This is a big mess. So this is why it's called as brainstorming. So it is just like we drew the diagrams, we built it by box, and then we try to connect things. So that is about it. So let me just copy this. Okay, and then I'm going to clear this out. Okay, so I'll take 2 minutes. So what I'm going to do is, so let us now get back to the now once the brainstorming is done, what we are going to do is now we are clear about how the things are connected. So first thing is input box, and let me draw it here. Input box, and second thing was important thing was one more thing we had forgotten, that was subscription box. And then there was mail box, and then there was news box, and then there was reports. So these are the 5 boxes or 5 modules or 5 packages, however you want to think. So these are just visual representation of boxes. So this is one box, two box, second, third box, and the new statement for that. Okay, and then now we are going to we have successfully connected into different modules. So what it did was input. Yes, there was an external input, so there is an external input here as well. Okay, so there are two inputs coming in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that input and send it to reports guy, and we're going to send the news as well to the reports guy. So report guy will have an additional aggregator. So in the reports we have further two more smaller boxes. So this is one is user and one is overall report. So these are actually connected. Okay, so this is user report, this is overall report. So this we are going to collect it, aggregate these two reports plus the news. So we are going to aggregate input and then news in this part somewhere here in a function, or in fact you can write another box, intermediary box. So since it's a smaller job, we are going to just write a function inside report models. In fact, you can carve out a different model as well. That is good. It serves the purpose. And then once you have the subscription data, while sending mail, so this you need to take this as well as the subscription data you need to send to mail. So there is a you need to send it to this aggregation module, which will be inside reports, maybe reports package. So you need to send that to reports as well. Now reports module does everything. That means it aggregates all the external data from news, subscription data. So why do we need subscription? Because we need to parse that reports and send this user related reports. So now our reports will send text or content to mail. So this mail will be sent to external one. So this is how you get a mail. So to address, from address, on the attachment here, on the text here, XLS text. So this is the final mail that you will get out of it. So this now if you show this diagram to your colleague, he will be easy for him. It will be now it is easy to understand. Okay, now there are some modules and now there are some arrow marks. Now we have connected that into a sensible diagram. So if you make this in a PPT, it looks quite professional, and now you can start writing the code, because now from the simple requirement text we have transformed into an idea, and that idea now it is ready to be coded. Now we won't jump into direct coding for everything. What we are going to do in next classes is we are going to take each one of these parts. Input part, we are going to write code, we are going to understand it deeper, and we are going to discuss. So by the end of doing all this 5 modules, what is the expected thing is you should be able to break any module. That means if you study about mail, what we're going to do is we're going to look deeply how the mail works, and then we're going to write code. And then if you are writing to Excel sheet, we are going to understand what is Excel sheet, how the columns are organized, how things are done in using libraries, and then we are going to break things into further into smaller parts, and then we are going to aggregate all of them. So while doing this, what happens is it's not only about mail or reports or input or the news extraction, all these things. Our mind develops into a habit of breaking things into smaller parts and connecting things back to back in the code. So once you have this pattern in your mind, you can break anything. For example, you can make graphs, you can make input web page, you can make any analytics that you want. Maybe you can, in fact, you can add machine learning things on top of database and extract some kind of data out of database. So all these things you can do once we have learned about how to break things. So we cannot simply learn about how to break things, we need to have some concrete examples. So that is why we are studying about the requirements, and we are going to break all these things. Okay, so that is what I had to discuss in this class. What we have essentially done is we have taken the requirements, we have understood the requirements, we did brainstorming, and then we have arrived at a design diagram. So this is now if architects have done this, this is the architecture diagram. So if it happens in the developers space, so now they will specifically discuss, okay, how you are going to make reports, what are the libraries and things like that. So when you talk about specific, it becomes design diagram. Okay, so this is a, you can just not call this as a design diagram or architectural diagram. Okay, so we have arrived from reports to the diagram. So now we are clear about the idea. Okay, so that is all I had. So if you have any questions, please ask me offline or now as well. We will start from Monday. So what I request is in the weekends you try to do the exercises, because once you get used to syntax and the errors that you might face, it is easy to write program for this entire project. So once you write this project, you get a lot of confidence in doing anything. That means you can automate anything, you can extract data from anywhere and play around with programming. So that is why I request you to do the assignments, so it gives stepwise support to move into the project. Okay, so that's all I had, guys. Thank you for listening. I think we are late, sorry about that. Okay.